One of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience is pain. And we all experience it. We all experience it at different times in our life. And we all get taught about pain through different types of experiences with it. Some of us, depending on the childhood that we have, we get taught that every little fall, every little tumble is catastrophic. It's the end of the world because our parents rush to us and they pick us up and say, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And other parents will, when we fall, say, "Yeah, he's fine. Rub some dirt on it." And then you're kind of left to go back to playing, even though your arm's dangling on by a thread and your knees all hobbled and broken. We all get taught about pain very differently. But one of the commonalities in how we're taught about pain, and this is even reinforced through medicine, through TV, through cartoons on Saturday morning, is that pain often means that there's damage. Okay, see the cat getting hit in the head with a frying pan by the mouse, and then the big welt shoots up. Yeah, we're taught that pain is associated with damage. But that's not always true. And this is where it gets interesting, is because we're often taught that, we're given treatments based on that, and yet we oftentimes end up still having pain well beyond when we should, even though we've done the things we thought we were supposed to do. So for those of you that are familiar with this channel, this will be a familiar topic of conversation where we talk about how to actually use your brain to change your situation and physiology. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. We're going to talk about how to use your brain to change your physiology and change your situation. And today we're going to talk about how to use your brain to improve pain. When it comes to pain as our modern world understands it, we tend to operate with a very antiquated model and understanding of what pain actually is. The model we use comes from about 400 years ago from a philosopher named Rene Descartes. He came up with what we call the Cartesian model of pain. What the Cartesian model of pain basically said was that there's a center in the brain dedicated to alerting you when your body is experiencing damage. And when you have damage, that signal goes up to the brain, and the brain then lights up and says, "Danger, Will Robinson, you have pain." The problem is that idea has persisted for 400 years, almost completely unrevised. And we see now more and more that there is plenty of evidence to the contrary of that idea. So for example, there is a condition called phantom limb pain. If you're not familiar with phantom limb pain, it occurs when somebody loses a limb, okay? Imagine my arm gets chopped clean off, either through injury, through surgery, I get frostbite and I have to remove it, whatever it is. I lose my arm, and yet without an arm, I still feel pain in my hand that I no longer have, okay? This is called phantom limb pain. And it can happen in arms, it can happen in legs, it can happen in any limb. But what happens is you lose the limb, but you still experience sensations of pain coming from the limb that's no longer there. Now, how could that be? I have pain, but I don't have damage. I don't have that hand anymore, but I'm feeling pain in that hand. So I have pain without damage. Sounds a little odd, right? Doesn't fit the narrative of damage and pain always has to coincide, okay? Now, other things that we see in research too is that you can have damage and have absolutely zero pain, okay? Easy one to look at. Have you ever had a bruise that you did not know where it came from? If you ever had a bruise, you find it on your leg, maybe your arm, and you find it a day later, 2 days later, 3 days later, or you don't even know how long it's been there, and you have no recollection of how it even got there in the first place. That right there is a sign of damage that you can actually see with your own eyes, and yet you never felt any pain from it. Because what happened in that situation was your brain never reached a threshold where it said, we now have to alert you to this situation. You have clear damage, clear signs of damage, but no pain. And this isn't just bruises. We see this in other things too. There is research looking at asymptomatic people, meaning people with no symptoms of pain or dysfunction, and then they do imaging on these people. They look at their spines, they look at their shoulders, they look at whatever, and they see all sorts of messed up stuff. So in some studies, they even see in up to 80% of the population, based on their age, up to 80+% of people have some sort of spinal anomaly on imaging with zero symptoms of pain. So these are people with bulging discs, fractured vertebrae. These are people with, all in all, things that look weird that on imaging you would look at and say, this person's probably in pain. And yet they do not experience pain. So why is that? Well, Today, I'm going to introduce you to a concept that can help to explain not only why it is that some people experience pain and others don't, but why some people experience it worse than others. And this is a concept that is completely missed and overlooked by most mainstream medical approaches to addressing and dealing with pain. So today, I want to introduce you to a concept known as the threat bucket. Yes, this is a bucket, and yes, this is where we'll put your threats. Not your death threats or anything like that, but just threats, okay? Now, what I mean by threats and threat bucket is this is a metaphor for how your brain is predicting your safety at any time. So your brain takes in information all day long, from visual information to sensory information coming from the body, to sound, to smell, to your sense of balance, sense of taste. All of these different sensory inputs, they all go into your brain. Okay, so think of this bucket as your brain. So as your brain takes in information, it then makes an estimate about how safe you are, depending on all of the other information that it's getting. So let's say you don't sleep very well one night. Your brain's going to take in that situation and say, let's raise the threat. Let's say you've got a balance problem. Maybe there's some inner ear issues, or maybe you're taking some sort of medication that's causing inner ear issues. Your balance is a little off. Your balance is off. Your brain's going to think you might not be safe to move through the world. So your threat level goes up. Let's say you have stress from a work meeting that you have to deal with, or a deadline that you're trying to meet. That's going to raise your threat too. Let's say you're going through some relationship stress. Boom. That's another threat input. Okay? Let's say you've got issues with dealing with traffic. That raises your threat. Blood pressure goes up, heart starts racing. Boom, more threat level. Let's add another one. Let's say you have a hard time predicting how to move a certain area of the body. Boom, threat level goes up. Okay? Let's say you now have a lack of understanding. Okay? A lack of education about a certain topic. Let's say pain. And your system says, I'm getting all of these signals. I'm not sure what they are, but you were taught very early on that any signal could be a sign of damage, and then you start to catastrophize. And guess what happens? You now have pain. Your threat bucket overflowed, and then you hit the threshold where now your brain says, it's not safe to operate in the world. We're going to give you pain to try and prevent you from doing so. Okay? So this is the threat bucket analogy. Your brain takes in all this information, it filters through and assigns weight and value to all this information. And then based on that, it decides, is this a level of information that's going to raise the threat or lower the threat? When your threat levels go up, eventually they'll overflow and cause pain if they continue to accumulate. On the opposite of that, you can reduce your threat. And when you reduce your threat levels go down and pain goes away. So that leaves us with our options. Well, how do we address this? Two things that I want you to think about when it comes to pain and reducing threat or changing your threat levels. You can either remove your threats or you can improve the signals that cause threats. You can either remove or improve, meaning if I can improve my sleep, if I can improve the quality of my sleep, well, that right there might lower my threat. I may not be sleeping perfectly yet. I might still be getting up earlier than I want to. I might always be in a state of sleep debt because of things going on. But if I improve the quality of my sleep, then maybe that lack of sleep doesn't cause as much of an increase, which means when the next threat level comes in, I haven't hit that threshold of overflow, and therefore I haven't hit a point where my brain says, now I'm going to give you pain to prevent you from getting more threats. Okay? So we can improve signals, improve your sleep, but sometimes when you fix the thing all together, you now remove that contributing factor as a whole. So we talked about potentially having movement issues because you can't predict movement well. Well, what do you think happens if we can make it so that you move better? Your brain can better predict what's going to happen when that joint moves through that range of motion with that level of tension and effort. Well, then it's no longer going to say, I need to protect you. It's going to say, I know what you're doing. You've done this before and it's safe. So when that happens, threat level goes down because you removed or improved one of the signals. So we want to look at this as these are all different contributing factors that we can either remove, if possible, or improve to make the brain feel better about them. So if we can improve the balance that you had a balance issue with, that can be a great contributor. If we can improve your vision quality, that can be a huge contributor. If we can improve your metabolism, you have more energy to process sensory inputs. So we can either remove or improve. Can I get you to get up earlier so that you can go to work sooner and miss the traffic by that much more? And then as a result, it doesn't take a toll on your system. These are all things that we want to think about when it comes to your overall threat level, is that these are all opportunities to change your level of threat. Now, how do you decide which one is going to be the one you start with? That's the $1,000,000 question. Any of these could be the big thing for you, okay? It could be that sleep is your biggest lever. And sleep oftentimes is a big lever for a lot of people. But sometimes that's not the most important one for you. So what we want to do is we actually want to assess and reassess your response. So here's what we do. If you're having pain, if your threat level has gotten to the point where now you have pain, we want to then see, can we get you out of pain? Sometimes we can't get you out of pain right away, but what we can do is we can start to improve and remove these inputs, and then your system starts to desensitize to everything. Because if you're in pain long enough, it starts to become a learned skill. Your nervous system gets good at keeping you in pain because it learns what you practice. It learns that this movement is associated with pain. These activities are associated with pain. These situations are associated with pain. And if you continue to do those movements, those activities, and be in those situations, your brain starts to reinforce that pain is a part of that experience. So what we want to do is we want to start finding the things that make the biggest input for you or impact for you. So when it comes to assessing and reassessing, it's simple. You pick a thing, any of the potential threats that you've listed out. So first thing is to list out all the contributing factors that you know are things that you just generally don't like, or things that you know could be improved. Maybe I could eat better. Maybe I could be sleeping better. Maybe I could be less stressed at work. Maybe I could be whatever. Get a list of all those things, and then you pick one and you go after it. Okay. So when you're going after it, there's an entire strategy to which of those individually. So it's beyond what we can talk about today. But let's take a movement drill, for example. Okay. Let's say we say, I think my movement skill could be better than it currently is. And then in doing so, that's going to improve clarity to my brain. So I'm going to find some sort of baseline assessment. In this case, I could use shoulder internal rotation. So I could see how well my shoulder internally rotates. I could check my forward bend, see how easily I can bend down, do that a few times. And then I would do a movement drill. Okay. Now that could be, I press a weight overhead. That could be, and I'm going to do a shoulder just so that it fits on camera well. I could be doing some shoulder circles because that shoulder circle is a complex nonlinear movement, and a complex nonlinear movement requires a lot of brain activation. So I could be doing my movement drill, and then I could say, did that improve my internal rotation? Feels a little better to me. Forward bend is a little bit better. I'm a little tight because I've been doing a lot of movement and working out lately, but that did seem a little bit better to me. So you could start to look for things that improve how your nervous system is responding. Because when you're dealing with an overflowing threat bucket, your movement quality is going to reflect that. When your system is stressed, it wants to keep you safe. One of the best ways to keep you safe is to lock things down. So if your movement improves, things are getting unlocked. And if things are getting unlocked, that's a sign that your threat level is decreasing. So if you're assessing your movement, you're assessing your threat bucket, and you're addressing any of these things either by removing or improving them, you should see that your movement quality is also going to get better as well. So that said, what I want you to think about this week is find something in your threat bucket. Find any of the contributing factors, list them all out, and then start figuring out ways to improve it. And once you start to figure out ways that you can improve it, start assessing it, seeing what makes a big difference, and then start finding the things that improve you and do more of those. Once you start doing that, your threat level will decrease, and over time, you should see a decrease in pain. Check that out. Let me know below what you think. Let me know how you respond. And most importantly, have a great rest of your week. I'll see you soon.